the name of International Affairs, we are honored to welcome you, Ms. El Messiri, UN representative in Lebanon at AUST today. My name is Paul Assaf, and this is our first year student, Maria Saab. We will be hosting the podcast today. This interview is happening as part of a global campaign regarding digital violence against women. It's a 16 days campaign, and the USC was part of it with Rotary and Abad. Now, as a prominent advocate for gender equality and women's rights, and through your international experience, we are happy to discuss with you and know more about this cause and your experience in Lebanon and the evolution of this cause as well. How far are we in the Arab world and in Lebanon from building an inclusive and more equitable societies?
Thank you very much for having me, Paul. Thank you, Maria. I'm really delighted to be with you today. It's an important question. It's a very broad question because we see a mixed picture when it comes to the reality of gender equality and women's rights in the region and also in Lebanon. On the one hand, you do see development gains when it comes to investments in women's education and women's health, particularly reproductive health. On the other hand, you see very stagnant progress when it comes to women's employment, women's access to the labor market. You see a dichotomy because women are graduating from universities across the Arab region equally fit and ready. In fact, many of them do extremely well, sometimes outperforming their male peers. But once they join the labor market, they either stop working or they're not able to advance in their careers. And a big part of that has to do with what we call care responsibilities. Many women drop out of the workplace around childbearing because there's not enough equitable distribution of that care responsibility. And by care responsibility, I mean taking care of children, taking care of elderly, taking care of individual family members that have special needs. And that responsibility falls disproportionately on women, and therefore they're unable to engage in paid work outside the home. So as a result of that, they either drop out of the labor market or they choose jobs that are next to their house and they don't prioritize necessarily career advancement. And you also don't see investments from state institutions in affordable, accessible, quality childcare, and also from the private sector as well, that has a responsibility towards its employees to provide a family or a work-friendly environment. And by that, I mean workplaces that are safe, that are inclusive, that there's no harassment of women, that have public transport, that's, all of these accessibility issues. So for that reason, you see, despite progress in education across the region, when it comes to women's education, you don't see that translating into employment opportunities. And that's a huge loss. It's actually a macroeconomic issue because you have half the population that is underutilized, essentially. You also see regression when it comes to political participation across the region. Again, this is an area where the Arab region does not fare quite well. In fact, it's second worst overall across globally. So political participation of women is also an area where there is regression. And another very important area, of course, is around social norms and legal rights of women and girls. It's still quite a big gap. I can get into that later.
Okay, thank you. Maria?
How can we empower youth to become advocates for safer digital spaces?
Education and awareness is key. I think it's also important to understand that if you're subjected to online harassment or digital violence, you need to know where you can submit a complaint, and you need to be confident that your complaint will be treated seriously. I also think the biggest problem is that the pace of change when it comes to digital tools, it's advancing at such a much faster pace than laws and institutions are able to catch up. And this is why you see a lot of challenges and bullying happening online, coordinated attacks, many challenges. But the best way to empower them is first for them to be educated on how to use digital tools safely, how to protect themselves, how to treat others as well with respect. That would be the way to go.
What are the most common forms of digital harassment that Lebanese women are facing today?
I think coordinated smear campaigns against women, online harassment, cyberbullying, sextortions. These are quite common. I think one of the biggest challenges Lebanon faces is it's a polarized environment, politically polarized environment, and that political polarization is sometimes used against women who speak out and who speak out against another political position or on the opposition, so that you see these coordinated campaigns, smear campaigns against them.
How can tech companies and social media platforms be held accountable for online abuse?
Oh, it's a big question. That's a big question. I mean, we saw many the heads of these big companies. They even appeared in front of the U.S. Congress and they were questioned. And it's very hard because, as I was saying earlier, institutions and laws are not keeping up with the pace of change when it comes to the digital world. I really don't have an answer to the question because it's very hard to hold them accountable. Before, if a crime happened, typically if a crime happened in a specific country, you're able to somehow trace the individual that was responsible. With digital campaigns or digital violence that happens, and it's real violence, it's hard to hold individuals accountable. And in fact, many of these companies are regressing when it comes to protection and safety online. So we've seen them go back on some of the safety measures that they had in place. They're firing staff or they're reducing staff that are focusing on protection. So it's actually a really big problem.
And you said that politically, women representation in the region is very far. Mm-hmm. How about, or what do you think about the violence against women and girls in the region, in Lebanon, for example, compared to global trends?
Well, it's hard to say because Lebanon doesn't have what we call a prevalence survey. Some countries invest in data and that collects prevalence of violence against women and girls. So I can't really say how does Lebanon fare compared to the others because we don't have enough data on this topic.
And normally rural areas are completely different from urban areas, the things that are happening, or you see that violence is happening equally in everywhere, rural and urban areas?
I mean, there's different perceptions of safety and risk that women living in rural areas face than in urban areas. In rural areas, you have the challenges of lack of services. So, for instance, the insecurity and lack of available, accessible services. Or maybe if there are services available, they don't have the necessary capacity to receive women's complaints. So, for instance, you don't have enough police stations in that area, and if you do, they don't have the necessary capacity to take action on that particular campaign, that complaint, whether it's domestic violence or rape or any of the other heinous crimes that women face, and then refer those complaints to investigate, right? That's the job, and then refer it to the judiciary for the judiciary to do its job. So I think what's extremely important is services. Women need to have access to sufficient services. Also, emergency safe accommodation can be available for women that need to be referred to safe spaces immediately because they have no other escape. Psychosocial support is crucial. So you need these, these different services that can help women escape violent situations. But in urban areas, you do have those same challenges, but maybe you have better services because it's more accessible, but you have other challenges that women could potentially face. So it's really hard to say, if it's worse in rural or in urban areas. But one thing is for sure, you need available services. You need strong state institutions that hold perpetrators accountable, and that there is no impunity. Because if perpetrators can get away with violent, heinous crimes, they will continue to do it. And the society will be less likely to come forward and submit a complaint if the ability to access justice takes too much time, right? And there's also, as you know, there's a lot of stigma about reporting. When women come forward and talk about domestic violence or rape or harassment, there's a lot of stigma that is on the woman and on her family as well. So many families are afraid to come forward because they feel like there's no point in it, right?
So, yeah.
In this case, what challenges do international organizations face when implementing safety programs, specifically digital, in Lebanon?
For digital violence in particular, the problem is global. It's not just in Lebanon. It's, again, because perpetrators can commit their crime and not be held accountable, because you can open an account from X country and hide behind multiple accounts. It's very hard to hold perpetrators accountable. So that's really the biggest challenge that we face. The other issue is around awareness raising about your safety, about safety online. That's also extremely important. There's a lot more scope to work on prevention by being aware, by raising awareness. And that's not a simple task. When we talk about raising awareness, we tend to think it's just one session. No, it's really important to understand what type of safety measures and safety tools that are available online to protect yourself. Having a closed account, making sure you don't just accept anyone online. If you have a public account, there are still also other safety measures that you can do to protect yourself. And I think also it's important to show solidarity when women are attacked online, when there is abuse or coordinated attacks online, that we also support each other, that the society supports her, that they don't allow this bullying to continue and happen.
Yeah, and then you think that online violence on women might impact the gender equality and the participation of women in public life? It can have a big impact.
Yeah. Online violence is part of a gamut of various forms of violence that are happening offline as well, right? So it's a continuation of violence that is happening often offline. And it's designed to silence women, to prevent them or to discourage them from speaking out and being visible in public spaces and being visible online. So, of course, that has an impact on women's participation in political and in public life. When this is happening, they will maybe not be visible online, maybe they won't engage in public life as much. You start to self-censor yourself. You start to be much more careful about what you say. So absolutely, it has an impact on women's ability to be politically active and to be vocal.
How does UN Women collaborate with local NGOs to address this digital harassment?
So UN Women is really privileged to work with many amazing, fantastic local women-led and women's rights organizations across the country that have been working in hard-to-reach areas under really tense situations. So we're really honored to, and I genuinely mean that, to work closely with them, to support them through grants, to support them by also helping their voices reach policymakers by supporting coalition building. We support the Feminist Civil Society Platform, which is a coalition of 47 strong local women-led and women's rights organizations across the country. The objective is to help them to speak and to act collectively as one voice, because when you work together, when there is collective agency, and when you're united, you're able to have much more of an impact on policies than if the individual organizations are dispersed across various topics and issues. So we support them through different means, through grants, through technical assistance, through also amplifying their voice, through making sure that their voices are heard by policymakers and other ways.
Are there any campaigns or collaborations that you are working on currently with the NGOs here?
Yes, we're always working with local organizations. It's part of our DNA. So yeah, of course.
And when it comes to women refugees, how is the situation? And are they more vulnerable than Lebanese women, than local women when it comes to violence, to online violence?
Yes, of course, because refugees do not have the same legal rights that citizens of the country have when it comes to enrolling their children in schools, when it comes to registering their children, access to legal documentation. So all of these make them more at risk of trafficking, of exploitation, because they're at the mercy they're at the mercy, essentially. They don't have the same legal rights as a citizen. So absolutely, they're much, much more vulnerable and much more at risk of exploitation.
Are there any successful youth-led initiatives combating online harassment that you could highlight?
I don't have any particular one initiative in mind, but there's definitely amazing youth organizations working in the country that are working on addressing various forms of violence, prevention, response, and so forth, yes.
And when it comes to the Lebanese economic situation and political crisis, how can they affect the efforts of to combat online harassment, and if not from the state or from the government, from UN or from different NGOs?
So, I mean, crisis definitely worsens the situation of violence for the whole society. Because it increases anxiety, it increases polarization. So when there is anxiety and political polarization, you're much more likely to be attacked. The second is that it weakens the capacity of institutions to respond to and to address cases of whether online violence or other forms of violence as well. So, of course, the crisis does have an impact on that.
So it made your job harder, or you were able to just go with it and to create a positive impact?
I mean, it does make my job harder, but in many ways you find a way. I mean, that's part of my job as well, is to really understand the context, find the entry points, find the champions. I've been very fortunate to have worked with some amazing individuals in the country. And it's all about finding those champions that you can work with and that you can advance the cause of women's rights and gender equality. And not get it stuck because of, there are always hurdles. In every country, there are always hurdles. There's always challenges, and you just have to find the right entry points to keep moving.
A question which you can answer or not.
Sure.
You have the freedom. Do you find sometimes it's hard to work with a political party than another one, or they all think the same? Like somehow, the way they think, or the same political party might have an opinion in the rural area, another opinion in the urban area. If you have ever worked with them, and have you ever seen the difference?
Interestingly, we just finished a study that I encourage you to look up online, and it assesses the situation of women's rights and women's leadership and participation across 8 of the main political parties in Lebanon. And it really, it was based on both quantitative and qualitative data that the political parties provided on, that assesses women's representation, in the bottom of the pyramid, so at the base of the organization, the middle rank, and the senior leadership. And across all the political parties, to different degrees, you see women at the bottom of the organization, at the base. But once you go up the pyramid, they're less and less visible, and their voices are less and less heard, to varying degrees, of course, right? So political parties rely on women for mass mobilization to get people to come to the polls. We know that women are a large voter during a huge voter turnout is women. But when it comes to women's issues, which political parties are actually championing women's issues? Which political parties are supportive of the reforming the personal status laws in the country, which, regardless of any confession, they do discriminate against women when it comes to access to, the custody of children, when it comes to even issues around guardianship. I mean, you would be surprised to know that in many contexts, women cannot open a bank account, right? Because they don't have the guardianship of their children. And this is across all the faiths, all the 15 recognized sects in the country. The nationality law is, again, discriminatory against women. And the problem with women's rights, the way I see it in Lebanon, it becomes ideological and it becomes political polarization. Because on the one hand, I always say that you have freedom in Lebanon, but when it comes to rights, it's a different situation because rights become hostage to political bargaining, political negotiations between the political parties. So you get stuck there. That's the biggest challenge.
They know that women are the base, but they don't give them the right role, I think. So they use this, and then when they, as you said, when they go up, it becomes less and less.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, are the individuals featured in current awareness and marketing campaigns appropriate and effective for advancing or addressing the current issues that were mentioned by Dr. Paul?
I don't know all of them, to be honest, so I'm not the best person to speak on whether they're, but all I can say is that diversity is important, especially in Lebanon, which is very diverse population. So you do need to have a diversity of voices that are speaking. You need to have more men that are speaking out against the issues. You need to have people with disabilities. There's a very strong disability rights movement in Lebanon. I'm very proud of that. I work with amazing women that lead organizations for people with disabilities that are really inspiring. So yes, I think it's more about the diversity of voices that are appearing online than me commenting on an individual in particular. Yeah.
So do you think that sometimes using the wrong person is affecting any kind of campaign negatively when it comes to women's rights, to gender equality? Using maybe a public figure can create a negative impact on the cause?
I mean, it depends on the public figure. If that public figure has credibility, then of course it's great that that person can speak out and lend his or her political weight to that cause. It would be a good thing, but it depends on the individual, on the public persona.
Do you think that people who are in the field, in the political field or in the social field, should, as you said now, that different people should be working on it, not just to focus on one. But do you think that people in political field and the social field should be doing more campaign, and they are the ones who are seen on TV and on billboards, or to keep it general when it comes to campaigning this cause?
I think for me, what is most effective is working on the ground, grassroots work, grassroots mobilization, working on the ground, being close to the lived experiences of women and girls is what is important. I think making sure that women and girls have access to services to be able to access justice if they are confronted or subjected to violence, gender-based violence. And I think that the best people to speak out are always those that are affected. So authentic voices. When you are a person that is affected, I think you are the best representative of the cause. So.
Now we can have still ask 2 questions. Is it fine?
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
fine with it?
Yeah.
So now. When it comes to different communities, each community, how do you think that the communities played in this important role in digital environment that can go beyond legal frameworks? What is the role of each community in Lebanon?
I don't know if you can rephrase the question.
The communities in Lebanon,
Yeah.
they play an important role in creating safer digital environments, and it goes beyond the legal frameworks. So. From one side, you have the legal frameworks that should take place and they should be implemented. But from the other side, there should be a work on each society or on each community. What do you think are how communities should work on implementing digital safety?
I want to focus beyond digital safety because there are other forms of violence that are happening, as I mentioned, that are, online violence is an extension of violence that is happening. It's a continuum of violence that women and girls face, from early enforced marriage at a young age, from denial of education, from, unfortunately, trafficking, domestic violence. There's many, many forms. And I'm not talking specifically in Lebanon only. This is a global problem, right? And I think a community approach, a coordinated community approach is crucial. That involves parents, schools, religious institutions, key stakeholders at the community level that look at this issue as not only a social issue, but it's a rights issue. And it's not marginalized. Unfortunately, what we see is the sense of normalization of violence against women and girls. Harassment is seen as sometimes funny,
Yeah, exactly.
It's not taken seriously. So I think you need community awareness, but you also need accountability. People need to be held accountable. If you're going to harass a young woman who's on her way to go to university, you need to be held accountable. You need to be held accountable. You need to be named and you need to be shamed, because that affects many women and girls, young women and girls, from going to university. I've heard this a lot as well. So you do need a community approach, but you need accountability.
And even when they're doing harassment, they don't look at this
As
young
harassment.
lady as, they don't see it as a harassment. Plus, as you said, it's a kind of funny joke. And they don't think that it could be their mom, their sister, their cousin. So it's really... really hard to not to think about it that way. To close this discussion, we will ask each one of us one last question, if you may. How can women balance between their private life and their careers, knowing that you, as you told us, you have a daughter, so you were able to raise her at the same time to follow your career and to get somewhere? What do you advise young women and how they should go with it?
What do I advise? First of all, marry a good man. Make sure that you have a man that is respectful, that supports your career, supports your choices. I think it's really important. And I think the question is also, in a way, it needs to be phrased differently, because we should not only be putting the responsibility of care on women only. It needs to be a shared responsibility between women and men, between the family and the state. It should not be only the responsibility. We always say how much we appreciate mothers on Mother's Day, all these beautiful campaigns about women and Mother's Day and all of that. But then what are we doing? And, in Lebanon, you still have very low maternity leave. So you have 10 weeks, I think, for the public sector and maybe 12 for the private sector, but it's still below the global average and what the ILO's mandate, which is 14 weeks of paid maternity leave. We don't have what we call paternity leave, so fathers, and we don't have enough nurseries to meet the demand. So if you are going to show appreciation for mothers, you need to help mothers by providing services that enable her to work both outside the home, if she chooses to, and inside the home, because she's doing. And you also need to redistribute that responsibility between not just women and men and the family and the state, but also the private sector. Employers need to also step up, and they need to make the workplaces safer and more inclusive of women and men, because it is, at the end of the day, good for the private sector to have diversity of voices. It helps their bottom line. It helps in terms of bringing in fresh perspectives. So I think the question is about, needs to be addressed to both women and women and men need to share that responsibility in a way that helps both of them move ahead.
So on a personal level, we should have a balance. Women do a balance between their private life and their career. At the same time, balance between men and women.
It needs to be so. The thing is, we only look at taking care of children as only a mother's responsibility. And while it's an incredibly important responsibility and women take pride in it, I take pride of having my children. I'm very blessed and grateful. But I was very fortunate that I had a husband that also really took care. I mean, I would do drop off, he would do pickup.
Sure.
You know, he's a better cook and I'm, you know, better with schooling. So it really was balanced, and it never felt that we're, you know, trying to, it was just balanced. It was, you know, that's why I was able to continue doing what I'm doing and he was able to continue doing what he's doing. And it was just a harmonious relationship where there wasn't that expectation that I have to do this and you have to do that. But it really is a partnership. It's a partnership and everybody brings in what they can. And that's really important. But aside from the women and men in a house, the state has to be present. The state has to step up. You know, there need to be policies and laws. So for example, as I mentioned, if you're asking a woman to come back to work immediately after having given children, that's also, you know, where is she going to leave her children? If you give her 10 weeks and then she has to come back, what is she going to do? Of course, she's going to, you know, stay at home to take care of her child. And then men will advance in their career, right? And then women, if you try to get back into the labor market, you can't. It's very competitive. So then you have to make a very, very difficult choice that men don't have to make, right? So.
Okay, so final question. What advice would you give to female international affairs students who want to proceed with their career?
I think internships are crucial. Work experience. That's what I tell my daughter as well. Work experience is very, very important. Communication skills are extremely important. 80% of your job is about talking to people, and it's about being able to understand the other person's perspective and to really genuinely listen. I don't think we listen enough in this world. I think everybody's quick to talk and to respond. I think it's really important to hone your listening skills, to really try to understand the interests and the position of the person that you're talking to build empathy. I think to get a variety of internships is extremely important because it exposes you to different experiences and it makes you look at the world differently and look at situations differently. So that would be my advice. And to read a lot. Read. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, as you told us, Gielan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
You're
this
very
interview.
welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Best
Good
of
luck.
luck. Thank you.